So thank you everyone for coming. My name's Lucinda, and so I look after the horse care project, and today we're going through the certificate 2 and 3 components. We do also have other presentations for the certificate 4 and the diploma. So there is another session this afternoon, or there is more times on Monday and Tuesday, which are available via the web page. So I'm just going to turn the webcam off now. Bear with me. All right, beautiful. So I will go through, firstly, our agenda for today. I will do a bit of an introduction on who we are, and my colleague Tom. Tom, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Excellent. So Tom is my technical writer or developer on this project, so he gets the fun job of interpreting all of the industry terminology and putting it into the skills standards template. So thank you, Tom. And I will also go through the project drivers, the timeline, and Tom will take us through what's being reviewed and the proposed changes. And at the end, I'll show you all how to do feedback, and we can then go through some components if anyone has any in particular that they'd like to discuss. Firstly, just a little information on who we are. Skills Impact's a non-for-profit industry-owned skills standard organisation. So we liaise between industry, training providers and the government for benchmarking skills standards, developing industry-led qualifications and tracking industry trends, skills opportunities and challenges. Part of our work involves publishing skills forecasts, and these are to provide advice about the future needs in the skills and their solutions. For the horse care project, we've been tasked with doing a full review in conjunction with the industry experts to ensure that all of the qualifications are reflecting current job roles and their needs. And we've also had a look at making a clear distinction in the pathways between the certificate 2 and 3, as that wasn't quite as clear in the previous versions of the documents. The units of competency have been updated to reflect current work functions. There's been a bit of a more robust approach to the assessment of the practical skills, and where we found that there was a few units duplicating skills across the training package, we have merged them and tried to remove that additional duplication. There's also a couple of units that we'll discuss that we're proposing for deletion, and Tom will go through that a little bit later. Overall, worker and horse safety has been a key topic that we have looked at throughout this project. So we have been taking the approach to remove unnecessary prerequisites as they had unintended consequences, and to embed safety where we can. So far, we've worked with SMEs across the qualifications and units of competency. Now, these SMEs are subject matter experts who have representing various areas across Australia from different parts of the industry and RTOs. We have undertaken a workforce functional analysis to review the qualifications and to really drill down what those job roles are for a certificate 2 and a certificate 3. We've had a separate little SME working group that systematically reviewed all the safety units, which are, I guess, the foundation for the horse care area. So we will be going through those units in this presentation. We've also worked with these SMEs in small groups to develop the first drafts, which are available on the webpage for your feedback, and that work was conducted during December and January. Our first drafts are available from the 16th of February to the 16th of March, so that's via the website and the feedback hub and through these webinars, and we're happy to take any of your feedback. I'm more than happy to speak with you and discuss anything that you may want to go through regarding those drafts. Our timeline for the project, we commenced in October 2020, and that was our review process, so working with the SMEs up until January to develop those first drafts. At the moment, we've got the drafts out for consultation, which is what we're going through now, after which we will review all the feedback received and embed those into the next drafts, which are the validation drafts. Now, we anticipate those to be available for your viewing early in May. After the validation drafts have been reviewed, we then put the contents through an equity and quality assurance process. With that process, there are just checks done to make sure that they are meeting the standards for training packages. Once all of that's been completed, they will be submitted off to the department for endorsement, We anticipate that that's going to be around the end of September 2021, which, if everything all goes nice and smoothly, we hope that the drafts will be endorsed and therefore put up onto training.gov by the end of the year. Excellent. Tom, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Lucinda. So yeah, I'm Tom Vassallo. I work with Skills Impact. I've been doing this development work for a number of years and a little bit of time in the ACM training package over the last 2 years. So if we just want to jump to the next slide, please, Lucinda. So in terms of the components, the project covers 3 existing qualifications: the Cert 2 in horse care, the Cert 3 in performance horse. We're calling that horse care. We're dropping the term performance horse. I can talk about that later if people are interested why. They're major reviews, redesigns, and we're doing a little bit of work in the Cert 3 in equine hoof care, which I think came out in 2018. We're mainly updating the codes. We've had to change the packaging rules there a little bit because one of the core units no longer exists. That's the apply knowledge of horse behaviour. I'll explain that later. So we're just touching that one up. In terms of units, which is probably the biggest body of the work, so we've been tasked with 27 units. We've revised 19 of those. We've created 1 unit and we're proposing to delete 4 of them. So that adds up to about 24. So you're probably wondering where are the other 3? The other 3 have been merged into those 19 revised. So we haven't forgotten 3 units or anything like that. We've just done a lot of cut and paste and redesign work. In terms of skill sets, there were 3 existing skill sets. The incorporate safety for beginner learners. We've retitled that to incorporate safety when instructing learners. In horse handling, there was a beginner's horse handling skill set, the number 38 there. We've tried to get rid of the word beginner, so that's been retitled. And I think we've changed 1 or 2 units in those 2 skill sets. The equine emergency shoe replacement skill set, all we're doing there is updating codes and titles. And we're pretty pleased to present for discussion or consideration 2 new skill sets. One is called Prepare to Work Safely Around Horses. That's a 1 unit skill set. We'll go into that in more detail later. And as part of our workforce functional analysis, this is the process we go through before we do any work. We sit with a number of experts, and I'll explain this a little more later, and they've identified a horse groom function or a leading hand, and we've packaged that into a skill set as well as tried to make it available via the Cert 3. So that's the sort of snapshot of the components. We'll move on, please, Lucinda. So I've got a slide or a graphic here about enrolments. Sometimes it helps to know what's been happening. So these are the 2019 enrolments. So if you look at the Cert 2, which is on the left-hand side there, I'll just have a quick look at the states. There's some small enrolments in Victoria and 2 RTOs in Victoria for the Cert 2. There are 23 enrolments spread across 3 RTOs in, or 2 or 3, because I think one of them has just come on there. That Clifton came on after 2019. A lot of enrolments in WA across 4 RTOs. And then it's sort of, you start to scratch it and say, what's happening in South Australia, Tasmania, ACT, Northern Territory, New South Wales with that qual? And I don't know the answer to that. We have an RTO focused webinar on Monday, so we might drill down into that a bit more unless people have comments they want to make during this one. In the Cert 3 space, it's basically Victoria and New South Wales, 103 across 3 RTOs and 25 for 1 RTO, Goulburn Ovens in Victoria. So it's an interesting bit of data. It's puzzling in terms of the state demographic, but the other factor or concern I'll raise here, there's not a lot of RTOs, especially in the Cert 3 space. And one of those RTOs, only like Clifton State in Queensland, when I created this slide in October, wasn't on there. I touched it up 2 days ago and they turned up. So a little bit concerning in the number of people offering the Cert 3. We might just jump to the next one, please, Lucinda. So now let's look at what sort of learners have we got. So in the Cert 2, they're teenagers, and they're mainly doing it as part of a secondary school program, and 31% of them are non-metro, they're regional. Kind of expected that a lot of Cert 2s are done as a pathways qualification into the trade or industry or into the Cert 3. Cert 3, still quite similar demographic, as in, you know, teenagers. Not many vet in schools, which makes sense because the RTOs above weren't vet in school type RTOs. Interesting in this case, 72% are non-metro. And the other thing I'll point out here is that apprenticeship traineeship, that number 1 under the Cert 2 is incorrect. I think that this data comes from the NCVER, so I don't like to change it. I've looked at the apprenticeship traineeship information across the states and territories. Only Northern Territory has the Cert 3 gazetted or listed or targeted as an apprenticeship traineeship. None of the other states have the Cert 2 or Cert 3, as far as I can tell, as an apprenticeship pathway. So I think in terms of an industry, there's some work to be done, and if it wants to attract more people into the industry, to lobby the different governments and say, and through the industry training advisory boards and the funding bodies, we really need to get these qualifications out there. We need to get them into the high schools. We need to make them pre-apprenticeship and also the Cert 3 and apprenticeship pathway. So the proposed changes, and we'll start with the we'll start with the safety units, sorry. A large part of this project has been to look at safety and the way it's been working or hasn't been working. So in terms of safety units, there are 4 existing units. There's the 101, approach and catch horses. There's the 201, work safely in industries with horses. There's the 202, handle horses safely and apply knowledge of horse behaviour, 205. 205 is a prerequisite to 202. That happened in 2017, December 2017, that was released. And that was part of a safety in equine training review project. Some of you would be aware that unfortunately a young lady was tragically killed in 2009 doing some training in an art show in New South Wales. That triggered a whole myriad of things from coroner's inquiries, safe work, investigations and reports. Safe Work Australia put out a guide, New South Wales put out a code of conduct. There was a court case and some penalties. And then ASQA did a strategic review into safety and equine training. All of that led to a project in 2017 done by Skills Impact and heavy emphasis on improving safety. So EQU 202 was made the prerequisite for 24 other units that involve horse riding or horse handling, or touching a horse basically. And fortunately or unfortunately, with the 205 as a prerequisite to 202, it's become a bit of a problem for some people that they're saying to deliver 1 elective unit, I've got to choose 3 now. So as part of the case for change for this project put together by the Animal Care Management Industry Reference Committee, it's a very clear directive that we review the implementation of prerequisite units developed as part of the horse safety project in 2017-2018, with an aim to remove the unintended delivery barriers to training while strengthening skills in horse safety, behaviour, awareness of behaviour and welfare. And their recommendation for more effective ongoing learning, prerequisites should be removed, with the practical components of the prerequisites instead being embedded within the elements of the equine units. So we've had a very clear brief to really look at this and see if it's working, what's not working, and how we can free up the enrolment process without losing the safety. So with that background, I'll go to the next slide, which summarises what we've done. So the first unit, EQU 101, approach and catch horses, that was a bit of a no-brainer. There is no enrolments in that unit. It's not in any qualification. There's no RTOs with scope. So we're proposing to delete it. If anyone is really worried about that, there's an almost identical unit with a racing code on it, and people can pick it up. And in the project, in the ACM project we did last year, the generic ACM units, there's a generic approach and catch calm animals, I think it is, something like that. So I don't think that one is going to be missed. The apply knowledge of horse behaviour, we have completely redesigned that, and we're calling that prepare to work safely around horses. This is a unit that is about interpreting horse behaviour and body language to minimise risks, safety risks to yourself as a worker, to other people, other workers, horses when working around horses, but not directly handling horses. So we've kind of redesigned this to be a pre-work and induction type unit, and we'll look at this unit in more detail later. So if you're a visitor to an equine workplace, if you're participating at an event as a steward in catering and admin, in traffic control, if you're doing trade work, whatever, the site supervisor, the site owner, knowing you've done this unit, would have a fair confidence that you know how to handle yourself around horses, that your activities aren't going to spook them, you're not going to leave gates open, let your blue heeler dog run in the paddock, that sort of thing, and upset them. And all they will need to do, hopefully, is give you a quick site induction, register you, show you the map, talk about the work you're doing, not about horse behaviour. Handle horses safely, the next one, has become a very robust unit now. We've taken out the prereq. We've added a new element. We will go through this unit, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, about responding to risks. It is now the core unit in the Cert 2 and Cert 3, and it's a prerequisite for virtually every other Level 2 and 3 unit that we've revised that involves handling a horse. But I will say we're not duplicating in those revised units horse handling. We're putting it all up front in the prereq, and we've removed as much generic horse handling stuff from those revised units. So that should streamline it. The next one, EQU 201, work safely industry with horses. That was a bit of a messy unit. It had stuff on career paths and sustainability and things like that. We've tidied that up as a follow safe work practices in equine industries. It has the handle horses and the prereq, and that's only in the Cert 2 and horse care. It's very much a conventional identify the hazard, assess the risk, report or control the risk type unit, with an element of situational awareness responding to ongoing risks at the end of it. And one of the biggest changes is the next unit, the new 3x1 work safely in equine workplaces. So currently the industry's been using the generic ACM WHS 301 unit, work safely in animal workplaces, I think it is. We've redesigned this as a robust unit for workers that work autonomously and can also be used by contractors. So therefore, the fourth bullet point there, it's in the Cert 3 in horse care and Cert 3 in hoof care, and it's also going into the Cert 4 in equine services, which is your basically allied health people who come to your workplace. It's got a very big component on responding to emergencies that involve horses, i.e. bushfires, where you've got to get horses quickly off your property and the dangers and risks associated with that. And that too has the handle horses safely prerequisite. So hopefully you can see we've created a ladder now of pre-work with the 205, the level 2 for everyone who handles 202 and the 201, and the level 3 for people who are taking some leadership on your workplace, responsibility to make sure it's safe and help others and help with evacuation, emergency control, emergency response. So before I talk about the certificate 2 and 3, I just want to explain this process that we undertake called workforce functional analysis. Whenever we review something major like this, we try and go back to first principles and say, what are the job roles? Because a qualification typically reflects a job role. And then we say, what are the job functions? Because a unit typically reflects a work function. So we sit with a whole bunch of industry experts from all over the country. We try to take what I call the pizza approach, speak to small, medium and large type workplaces. So we're not only getting the big end of town, we're talking to people who, you know, may only have 5 horses, a small adjustment place. But we've got the other end where we've got, you know, large event centres and everything in between. We've got typically we have a 70-30 mix, 70% industry, 30% registered training organisations. And after we've worked out the job roles and the job functions, we say to them, in this job role, which of these work functions are done by everyone typically? They become our core and the rest become electives. So it sounds very simple and it is on one level, but getting agreement on that is not so simple. So with that background, we've reworked the Cert 2 in horse care. We've made it clear the target audience is entry-level horse workers that typically carry out stable work, handling, grooming, exercising, and may also ride horses. The previous, or the existing qualification lists a number of job roles like stud hand, groom, stable hand. We have taken those out and just said, because they're repeated in the Cert 3, so we didn't want the duplication of roles and made this an entry-level qualification. We've kept it that they perform routine horse care tasks under supervision, and we've listed some of the workplaces there, and they're quite broad, from adjustment to event to veterinary facilities, riding, breeding, whatever. There was a riding specialisation in this qualification. We've taken that out. There was a lot of debate whether riding should be included. The SMEs, subject matter experts, told us yes, they do ride, but they ride typically in controlled environments. And it's too early to be called yourself a specialist rider. And we've added a line in the qualification description that's suitable as a pre-apprenticeship, trying to point out, you know, this is a pathway into the industry, so to try and get more enrolments. So we've changed the packaging rules slightly. It was 14 units, now it's 12. Again, trying to make it smaller and more focused on practical skills so it can be completed, given that it's primarily a secondary school qualification. 4 units and 8 electives. It was 6 and 8, and the breakup is 4 from Group A and the other 4 from Group A, B and C, which I'll explain, or can be imported from another training package or accredited course. And we've got an elective Group C, which I'll explain, which is prerequisites that are old. So I'll just jump to the next slide, please, Lucinda. So as I said earlier, the course gone from 6 to 4. There was a communication unit, ACM GAS 202. We are trying to remove that unit from the ACM training package. There are better units in the BSB training package. Some of you may or may not be aware the federal government has an agenda to reduce the number of units from the National Register, training.gov.au. So where we see a unit that's almost identical to a better unit, we will remove it. And we have embedded workplace communications in the units where relevant, especially oral communication and written communication. And 205, apply knowledge of horse behaviour, was in the core. That's now embedded in the handle horses. That's why that's gone. So the core is, as you see it there, the handle horses, the level 2 safety. There's a provide daily care for horses. This is basically a merge of 3 existing units. There's a HBR horse breeding provide daily care. That's been the shell for this unit. There's an EQU equine 203 provide basic care for horses. And there's an EQU perform daily tasks. So we've created a quite robust daily care unit. The same thing has happened in the next unit, check and treat horses. The old HBR check and treat horses has had merged into it, the EQU provide basic care for horses. And you can see the prerequisite for those 2 bottom units is the handle horses. So we'll just move on, please, Lucinda. So the Group A, we've grouped it and called it horse, exercise and riding. There's the revised non-riding exercises, that's your walking, treadmill type, and swimming, whether it's in a pool or in the beach. The horse riding skills at walk, trot and canter has been revised. The developed riding skills for exercising horses had a slight change. It includes some stuff from the arena one, ride performance horses in the arena. Lunge educated horses just been revised. The next unit, manage personal health and fitness for working with horses, is a major redesign. You probably won't recognise the old and the new. We've tidied up a lot of the flow of that. We've added psychological and emotional health and well-being, and we've taken a lot of little bullet points and put them into the knowledge evidence from the existing units to give it a better flow. It's mainly used by the racing industry, but I think it will have take up in the general equine workplace as well. Transport horses by road has been revised, and the prepare horses for competition presentation and sale is probably the only thorough grooming unit in the whole training package for horses, where you have to prepare a horse and groom it to a breed standard or a sales presentation or an event standard or some kind of standard. So there were 2 units related to events in that. We've taken those out to make it more focused on grooming, and I think it should be a compulsory unit, but we've made it an elective because just to leave some flexibility. And again, it's the prerequisite here is always handle horses safely. So do you want to just jump down one more, please? So we've left the stock and stock work in general group. That's pretty much what you had. All we've done here, we've added those 2 top units, the ACM, AIM, animal incident management. So contribute to safety at incidents involving large animals. So as I talk to people, I often hear about a horse stuck in a fence and it's broken its leg or whatever, a horse that's cast and they can't get it up. And that first one is a prerequisite to the 202, which is the actual doing, where you're actually helping to, I guess, rescue the animal or move the animal. Everything else is pretty much what you had. We've made sure that AHCWRK 209 is monitor water supplies, so taken away the confusion with the code there. And we've added some racing units down the bottom because they were requested. So elective group C prerequisite units, fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have control at the moment over that AHC LSK 218, ride educated horses to carry out basic stock work. It's a different training package, not in this project. That currently has 3 prerequisites: the handle horses, which has applied knowledge of horse behaviour, plus the riding one. We don't want people doing the handle horses old version and the new version. So we're saying you can only do that if you're doing that stock work unit. That's the logic behind that. So that's kind of the summary of that qualification. So the Cert 3 is targeting the highly skilled job roles, and we're listing the job roles now: the stable hand, stud hand, groom, farm hand, and rider. The rider used to be something like trail rider, system, and stock rider. We've just made it rider. So those same job roles, titles, were in the Cert 2, and that's why we took them out. One of the things we have to do is demonstrate to the quality assurance people that our qualification reflects the correct AQF level. And if you start putting in job roles in 2 quals, and one's a Cert 2 and one's a Cert 3, you're going to be asked the question, is this job at level 2 or level 3? Because it can't really be at both if it's reflecting good contemporary design of AQF qualifications. We've said here these people may do riding and non-riding work, and they may or may not prepare horses for events. So probably the biggest difference here, and we've tried to stress it in the qual and the units, they're on the broad direction and they're using discretion, judgment and handling to solve problems around the horse work they're doing. Okay, so a horse is an unpredictable animal. It's got a personality, a temperament. It has a good day, a bad day, a good moment. These people are exercising judgment related to the tasks they're doing, and maybe thinking twice before they force a horse to do something that may lead to an injury to the horse or to the worker or other people. We're also saying they're largely responsible for their own work. They can, plan their day, coordinate processes. And as part of the functional analysis, it came out that there is a kind of a head groom or leading hand. So we've tried to cover that, and I'll explain that later in the qualification, people who coordinate work as well. And we've added the comment in the descriptor, it's suitable as an apprenticeship, again, trying to drive or to attract enrolment and funding. So in this case, we've done the opposite to the Cert 2. Instead of reducing it, we've added 2 units. So it's gone from 16 to 18. The logic behind that was to make sure it's got the breadth and the depth, and it wasn't easy to select the core units, for example. I'll go through those shortly, but we've tried to make it a bigger, stronger qualification. The electives are 6 from groups A or B, and the remaining 3 can be imported. I'm sorry, from A, B, C, or D. D is a prerequisite group again, but you can import. And we've put a bit of a caveat here that you've got to do at least 5 of the 9 electives have to be coded level 3 and above. That's because we have included a number of level 2 units to provide credit or a pathway from the Cert 2, but we don't want you doing 8 level 2 units, because then you're going back to almost doing a level 2 qual. So we might just jump down to the core, please, Lucinda. So the handle horses safely we've talked about. The implement a horse health program, that's a big unit now. It's a combination of the previous maintain health and welfare of performance horses, prevent and treat equine injury and diseases, and another unit called maintain horses in a healthy state. So that covers horse health from start to finish in a programmed way, following a routine health program. The next unit, similar approach, provide routine care for horses. That's a combination of 2 units, the old care for performance horses and the maintain horses in a healthy state. So that's a big unit. Transport horses by road, just a revision. The competition one I've talked about. We've got in here, interpret and address horse behaviour and welfare. A bit of debate around that. It's a level 4 unit, but the SME advice was, if you're going to be a skilled horse person, you need more than just the horse knowledge, horse behaviour that's in handle horses. You've got to know a bit more about horse behaviour and psychology and welfare. So that's in there. Open to feedback on all of this, of course. The INF 302, that's just a replacement of a previous generic AHC biosecurity unit. The work safely is the new level 3. I'll talk about that. And we've replaced the old SIS supply first aid for horses with the RGR one, because the SIS training package deleted their one. So that's the core. Again, the prerequisite is handle horses safely in those. If you want to just jump to the next slide, please, Lucinda. So here we've got the Group A, horse riding. You can see the first 5 units are all level 2s. So that's why we have that caveat, that you can't pick too many. Most of those have not had many other changes. Just give me a second. Yeah, so yeah, most of those are pretty much just what was there before. We've got a level 4 unit there, ACM EQU 4X17, advise on nutritional needs. A lot of debate was had whether that should be in the core or whether it should be elective. At the moment, the majority are saying it's an elective. Keen to get feedback on that. And the rest is pretty much what you had in the past. Maybe we've reduced a few units. So we might go to the next slide, please, Lucinda. So Group B, this is going back to the workforce functional analysis. It came out that there's entry-level stable hand, groom, rider, farmhand type roles. There's highly skilled stud hand, stable hand, groom, rider roles. But there's also in some workplaces this kind of head groom or leading hand type role that coordinates horse care tasks, coordinates other workers sometimes, So we've created this group with a very clunky title to try and cover that. So, and we're going to put advice in the implementation guide that the units in this group should ideally only be selected after completion of the core units or by individuals that have sufficient industry experience in the core skills and knowledge and want to develop these coordination type skills. And we've listed these units, or some of them, not all of them, in the head groom functions coordinator skill set. Again, really clunky title. I don't know how to better express that. Maybe we'll get some ideas from the feedback, but we can't really justify creating a Cert 4, which was probably better reflects this sort of role. Under the Australian Qualification Framework Level 3 descriptors, it does allow Level 3, it says takes responsibility for their own work and limited responsibility for the outcomes of others. So we can package it in here, but we're keen to hear feedback on that. And it might be time to bring up the qualification now, please, Lucinda. We'll just talk about the rest of it that way. So if you scroll down to the group, I think the group C, sorry, the general. Yeah. So this was the general in the old group. We've tidied it up a little. We've added the animal incident management, the first 2 units there. Again, I'm not happy that we have prerequisites in there because probably the useful unit is the participate one, the 202, but you've got to do the prereq to do it, but that's just how that's been designed and we can't change that. Yep, and there's a whole lot of farming type stuff there as well. And there's a little comment next to Gen 315. You might want to click on that, please, Lucinda. There was a lot of talk about whether we need a communication, a teamwork unit, a first aid unit in the core. And the consensus was, let's pack this with horse handling, riding, management, coordination, technical skills. We'll make sure the foundation skills cover communication and working with other people where possible and reporting and stuff. And we've put these other things in the general group. This particular unit hasn't been published yet. It's going up to the Australian Industry Skills Committee next week, 25th, I think, of Feb. So you won't see it on TGA for a little while, but you can access it via that link on our website. It's a unit we created in last year's project. So please scroll down to Group D again. So Group D, these are the prerequisites for the LSK units because we've got the horse riding. So we've got this new skill set, prepare to work safely around horses. Maybe I'll just say a word about skill sets. My understanding currently is some states fund skill sets that are in a training package. Some states will fund the skill set put together by industry or an RTO. I think New South Wales is like that. And places like Victoria and WA currently are exploring whether they'll fund skill sets. They didn't fund them in the past. So we try and create a skill set to give a unit a home. In this case, ideally, because this is a pre-work unit, it doesn't fit into any qualification. Although we've had to list it in the Cert 2 because under the rules we work under, every unit needs to be in a qual. That changed about a year ago, that rule. We've got to do that. So this is your induction skill set. And the next one is that horse groom functions coordinator skill set. As I say, not a great title, but we're keen to hear about this. If people are for it or against it, it could be something that someone's already got their Cert 3 or got 10 years experience, doesn't want to do a Cert 3, but wants to take on some more work or get recognition for what they're doing. So the first 3 units are horsey units, as in knowledge, high skill knowledge type stuff, especially that managed selection of horse for handler, rider, driver. It's an important role. A lot of safety issues around that. And the next units are around leading people, coordinating people, plans, and coaching people. The other 3 skill sets are existing. In the SS 38 and the 37, we took the word beginner out of it. both of them had beginner in the title. That was just like saying, you know, talk about the psychology of not getting enrollments, just add the word beginner to stuff, and that's what happens. So we've just taken that out of it. And I think there's only enrollments in the handle horses safely one, very few at the moment. We've updated the units there to reflect the current units, and the equine emergency shoe replacement skill set, we've just updated codes there. And then we'll get into the detailed units. So the key changes you've probably picked up, I've talked about HBR, horse breeding, PHR, and those two sectors we have merged into one big sector called equine. The result of that merge means we have bigger units, but with better workflow, more comprehensive and standalone. So you don't have to have 3 units and each of them touches on groom and rug or horse, or one of those units has something about feeding and one has something about housing and one has something about a health check. It's just one big unit now, you know, provide routine care for horses. That has also meant, in terms of RTO effort and learner effort, the duplication has gone. So each of those units had a thing on safety, a thing on sustainability, a thing on communication. We've tried to remove as much of that as possible. And in some cases, we basically remove the units effectively. So the other change is handle horses safely doesn't have a prereq anymore. So in terms of units, you don't have to enroll in 2 prereqs to do 1. But as I've said, we've kept handle horses as the prereq and several other EQ units. But where the handling of horses is duplicated in those other revised EQ units, we've taken it out where possible, or we've made it very specific to the work task. So if it's a lunge educated horses, we will have safety, handling horse safety related to lunging. It won't be a generic statement. Because of the rework and the duplication that existed, we've had to basically start from scratch, get the ingredients, re-scramble the omelette and bake it. So there's a lot of elements and performance criteria either moved between units, merged, added, PCs, the order. As a result, most of the units are not equivalent, which means that the RTOs will have to look at their programs a lot more closely. In terms of assessment requirements, we've had to update the evidence for skills and the performance evidence, and in some cases we've had to increase it because of the merged units, and we've tried to make it very specific. The knowledge, same thing, we've had to add more evidence to reflect the merged outcomes, but we've also taken out a lot of unnecessary stuff. A lot of duplicated stuff has gone, and we've been very keen to get rid of broad statements. Some of the units used to have knowledge of animal welfare. I mean, that's a broad statement. So that sort of statement is either gone or become knowledge of low stress horse handling techniques for lunging horses. So you've only got to teach the low stress techniques for that activity, not the whole, you know, broad world of the 5 domains of animal welfare and et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully we've improved the clarity and the consistency across the units. So that should help with delivery. In the assessment conditions, in some cases we've made the assessment environment clearer, as in especially the riding units. We've updated the live horses statement, and we'll show that. There was a unit, there is a statement in all the equine units at the moment, something that says training and assessment strategies must show evidence of use of the companion volume. We've got rid of that. It's just too broad a statement. It's open to various levels of quality, and we don't think it would pass quality assurance now if we kept it. And we've just put in a really basic statement. There's a user guide with some useful resources. They're there if you want to use them for your risk assessments. And we've also strengthened or clarified the horse riding unit, horse matching, and also the assessor requirements. So that's kind of the general sweep. We might look at a few units now, probably starting with handle horses. So as I said earlier, this particular unit, we have made it more robust. And because the strategy has been to remove duplication, we've needed a very robust prerequisite unit. So once you've covered this unit, we don't need to cover the generic horse safety and handling horse safety in all the other units. So it's gone into this one. At one point, I thought it was a level 3 unit, but the SMEs told me, no, please keep it at level 2. So we've done that. And there's a, it's about the first paragraph, skills knowledge to identify, safely catch, control, should be a comma after that, handle and release calm and consistent obedient horses for an activity. It's for people under supervision, and we've specified some of the workplaces. If you scroll down, you'll see this one doesn't have a prerequisite. That's gone. So the first 2 PCs, if you scroll there, please, Lucinda, a lot of the stuff from EQU 205, apply knowledge of horse behaviour, has gone into the first element. Okay, and a lot of EQ 205 has gone into the knowledge evidence. We'll look at that later. And so the first 2 elements probably aren't dissimilar to what you've had, but they're a little bit more comprehensive. And if we go to element 3, please. This one we have looked at in a lot of detail. There's a handle horses safely unit in the racing training package. There's a handle horses unit in the SIS sports and rec training package. There was this unit. There was the 101, catch horses. We have looked at this and said, how can we build the best element here and cover the essentials for handling of horses and the typical things you would do. So we've got you catching, leading, tying up a horse, and then leading it through gateways, doors, other horses, other people. Some of that has come from the other units, and then the working with a group that was debated. We've put in fitting a horse restraint and controlling a horse, and lifting fore and hind limbs as part of this. So the next element, please, Lucinda. A lot of discussion around this. We have heard from some, mainly registered training organisations, this doesn't belong in this unit. It's too hard. It's a barrier, especially for the high school RTOs. We looked hard and long at it. Where does it fit in? Can it go into another core unit? At the end of the day, the majority of subject matter experts we're working with said, leave it in. It's important. If you're going to handle a horse as the robust handling unit, it needs to be in there. It is under supervision. And so we'll talk about that shortly after I've finished going through the unit. We've added a new element, respond to immediate safety tasks. So part of handling a horse is understanding that it's unpredictable, it can be spooked, it may be getting tired when you're doing some work with it, or something's wrong with it, it might be coming down with some illness. You need to be aware of this, monitoring behaviour and responding and or reporting it. So just scroll down to the foundation skills. Numeracy, I'm going to point out, numeracy has been added to most units, and it's quite a generic thing. Estimate and measure distance, area, weight, temperature and time. SMEs tell us all of those are important, whether you're feeding a horse, riding a horse, exercising a horse, those sort of concepts you need to know. And the oral communication we've made a little bit clearer. Just scroll down to the mapping comments. So if you want to know what we've done in each of the units, we've put a lot of detail into the work done here. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see where we've said we've added new performance criteria, we've merged, we've deleted, we've added foundation skills. So if you want to compare the old to the new, you need to start here and maybe bring up the old unit if you want to go to that detail. In the performance evidence in this unit, we've kept it similar to, I think, what's there now, 3 different calm, consistent, obedient horses. And we've got that they'd have to safely approach, caught, controlled, led, and restrained each horse, including, and there's the generic stuff about risk, identifying hazards, assessment and control and reporting, communicating, safe and low stress horse handling techniques, that's your animal welfare, PPE, preparing equipment and the zones, and then we've gone to nuts and bolts of what you have to do with each horse. That's your volume and frequency. And in here, we've gone to a little bit more about the, right down the bottom, loaded and unloaded the horse into horse transport vehicle under supervision and position the horse. Okay, and the last bullet point, repeated horse handling cues. That's the go, slow, turn, stop. That's come out of the existing apply knowledge of horse behaviour, which is merged into this. And the knowledge evidence in this one is very strong because it is the main safety unit for handling horses. So the body language stuff, the typical horse responses, the common hazards, the kicks, the bites, the stomps, the crush, the zoonoses, manual handling, and common controls, okay? And purpose of PPE, etc., etc. There's a bit of controversy over the twitches, hobbles. So again, we're happy to get feedback on that. And I'll just quickly show the assessment conditions before we open up for comment. So we've kept this as a equine workplace where you can simulate it if you want, the workplace, as long as you've got all those resources. So for the live animals, we've said live horses specified in the performance evidence assessed as suitable for the assessment of this unit and the individual being assessed. So don't bring out a stallion or a colt for this unit, because if something goes wrong, you will be held accountable for that. You've got to make sure you've done that. Bearing that in mind, we have removed that statement about using the companion volume. If you look at the comment on the companion volume now, it says, the companion volume user guide, safety and equine training provides advice and sample templates to assist assessors with the risk assessments that should be undertaken to help ensure the safety of all involved in the assessment. So we're not telling you what to do. You can have your own assessments. You can have your own tools, processes. We're saying there's a user guide with some samples that have been created based on the New South Wales Code of Conduct. We're not mandating they be used. And I think the other stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Next one, Lucinda, please. So this is the new level 3 safety unit, and given the government's agenda to reduce number of units, we don't create a level 3 safety unit when there's already an existing ACM WHS level 3 unit lightly. So we went back to the experts, the functionalists, and said, what is different about this unit? Okay, and the main difference here is safety in an equine workplace, especially when there's an emergency response. The whole safety game is different to, evacuating a factory when the fire alarm's on is different to evacuating an equine workplace when there's a bushfire front 15 minutes away from you. So that's kind of the thinking behind this. So if you scroll down to the first, it's got the handle horses safely. So we're assuming you can handle a horse. The first part, the first element is about your own knowledge of health and safety requirements, responsibilities, roles, planning your work, doing your own work, etc. We've had to put that in there because this is the level 3 unit that's in the core of the Cert 3. We don't have any other evidence of people doing this sort of safety process without that element. The next 2 or 3 elements really focus on taking some leadership for safety, supporting others, providing support. Element 3 is quite different now. We're saying at this level you have to maintain currency of information around safety, whether that's technology, processes, procedures, infection control, whatever, and raise health and safety concerns in your workplace and contribute to workplace inspections, meetings, etc., consultations. And the last one, which is really strong in this, is you have to take some leadership, autonomy, responsibility for a workplace emergency response. So knowing the procedures, practicing the procedures, understanding the signals and the equipment and how that works. And when that happens, you contribute to the mitigation of that emergency within the scope of your own role and training, and you assist others, whether it's other workers, other responders or emergency personnel, and then you have a role to play when the emergency is over to review how that went and give feedback. This one's also been written for contractors, so it's the core in the search for equine allied services. So in some situations, contract workers, whether they're body massagers, dentists, farriers, etc., they may have their own workplace where this applies, or they may come onto your workplace and have to know your routines. If they regularly turn up on Monday morning to do their work, they're almost part of your workforce in that sense of they've got to be part of the plan to respond in that situation. If you scroll down to the performance evidence, so the first bit is just they can do any 2 generic tasks. We don't really mind what they are that involve horses, so they can demonstrate they understand hazard ID, risk assessment, risk control, documentation, and they've got to talk about a backup plan because horses don't always behave as you expect, despite the best intentions. And then the next bit is about a simulated emergency. We've said one of the emergencies must involve a fire, and that's been borne out lately with what's been happening in WA, and we have 2 or 3 people on our SME working group. One lady, I think, had 13 minutes to evacuate 7 horses from when she was told get out. So it's simulated. We're not expecting people to do it, but they've got to know what they're going to do. And one of those other scenarios, a flood, a medical emergency requiring first aid, that's typically where a horse or a rider have had an accident. So both the horse and the rider need some kind of attention, first aid. And what they would do in an outbreak of a zoonotic disease, again, this is more knowledge type stuff, and the rest of it is there. They've got to use the hierarchy of control and explain what they would do with 2 of the following: less experienced workers, contractors, visitors, clients, carers, volunteers. And there's some other things there. The knowledge evidence here is quite heavy because it's a heavy unit. It's key features. The word key features we're using a lot in the PE to limit it to equine. We don't want to say key features of workplace health and safety legislation, because that would mean your state and territory OHS Act, RAGs, codes of practice. We've said only the bits that relate to equine. Same for responsibilities. Responsibilities of the Work Health and Safety Committee. Key features of other things like code of practice from Safe Work Australia, that guide. That's gone in there. Scroll down a little bit, please. We list a number of typical hazards and stuff in here, and common controls. And just a little bit more, please. Yep. And key features of emergency response plans that would cover some of those events: uncontrolled horses, fire, floods, extreme weather, zoonotic, etc., etc. And procedures for for horse relocation during emergency. So with vehicles, without. I think it talks about traffic control in there somewhere as well. Yeah. So that's quite a robust unit. In the assessment conditions, the equine workplace relates to the physical 2 tasks, and obviously the emergency response would be a simulated thing. And there's quite a number of relationships that have to be covered here when they do that emergency response planning and work. So this was the old apply knowledge of work, apply knowledge of horse behaviour, but it's effectively almost a new unit. It's for people who work to help people interpret and understand horse behaviour and body language to minimise the risks of injury to themselves, others and horses. They don't directly handle the horse. It's made very clear in that second paragraph. So this is not, if you've done handle horses, this is not the unit for you. Unfortunately, we've had to put this as an elective in the general group in the Cert 2. I can't see Cert 2 people doing this. We have to put it into a qualification under the training package rules. So we're targeting people in admin, in finance, marketing, customer service, catering, facility, equipment repair, trades, allied health, maybe, that don't visit, may visit once or twice, who knows, stewards, traffic controllers, those sorts of people. No prerequisite because it's a pre-work. The first bit of it is your old apply knowledge of horse behaviour. So identifying a horse, natural instincts, horse senses and how they work, environmental conditions and stimuli that can upset a horse, trigger a flight or flight response. That's sort of the main theme of this unit. How horses respond to different people in different situations, and identifying body language that tell you a horse maybe is unsettled, agitated or in pain, or conversely relaxed. The next element is about the sort of safety around your own work. So if you're a tradie coming to repair a fence, what would you normally consider? And recognise the language, body language of your own work that could affect the horse, and the positive actions you could take to minimise that. And then reporting to the site supervisor or manager or leading hand, whoever, before you come onto a workplace. You'll sign in, they show you a site map, you confirm what you're going to be doing, look at the risks involved with that, how you'd respond, any support you need, and identify your own stuff as well. And I think the last element is just to be vigilant and monitor as you do the work, maintain situational awareness. You thought you had your dog tied up, but it's got out. You thought you closed all the gates, but now there's some horses wandering around you. Something's gone wrong. Or the horses are moving in the paddock for some reason. Is it because you've just started up your equipment or something you've done? So you're monitoring that, and something is not in your control, you report that. And when you finish the work, you talk to your supervisor and say, look, this part of the work is finished, but I didn't get to finish that. I'm coming back in the afternoon. You plan the next bit of the work. Okay, so that's the unit. The evidence is pretty much knowledge evidence. Some identifying behaviour, typical behaviour of horses, and explaining it, observing it. 3 different horses. Now, we've said in the assessment conditions this can be simulated, can be video or live. We're not mandating you have to actually do this with live horses. Identified some hazards in your own work, assessed and explained how you're going to minimise the risk related to those hazards from your own work when working around horses. Completed a site safety induction and reported outcomes. So again, lots of knowledge, more knowledge evidence and performance evidence. If you want to scroll down, please, Lucinda. Based on horse behaviour, flight and fight response. Just go down a little bit more, please. And this one here, this is the typical things that can upset horses when you're working around them that lead to accidents, incidents, uncontrolled, as in they got out, starting up equipment, loud noise, machinery movement. Animals, we're not picking on dogs, but typically a tradie may have a dog on the ute, may not have thought about that. Coming up to horses from a blind spot, when other horses are joining in. Gates, as I said, you might want to turn off your loud equipment if you've got a group of riders walking past the place where you're working, that sort of thing. So that's it. And then the assessment conditions here. As we said, live horses in the equipment or videos. You don't have to use a live horse, and you need a site supervisor. I know people have talked about a sort of a white card type unit for this industry. The original genesis behind this was that approach, but we can't create a white card unit in an industry that's not regulated. Like you can do responsible service of alcohol, work safely, prepare to work safely in the construction industry. You can make those sort of units with the regulator. Where there's no regulator, it's tough. So we've done the next best thing, we think, hope, created a knowledge-based unit. So if you've got an event centre, you've got an event happening in a public space, you've got stewards or traffic controllers, if they've done this unit, we've done a lot of the pre-work you need to do. You just got to show them the site routines. Hopefully they know enough about horse behaviour that their activity won't create incidents or risk. Okay,
And this unit housed in a skill set as well.
Yep. It's in the Cert 2. I mean, I don't, we have to put it in there. I mean, I could see it being taken up in the Cert 2 if you had a complete novice, knew nothing about a horse, but really the Cert 2 handle horses safely, and it goes way above this one anyway. So let's look at one riding unit. And I just want to show you what's changed in the assessment conditions in riding more than anything else here. So this is perform riding at skills at walk, trot and canter. If you just scroll down to the assessment conditions here, maybe the PE stopped there, so sorry. We've kept it, they've got to provide evidence safely performed horse riding skills at walk, trot and canter in an enclosed environment on at least 2 different horses, assessed as suitable for rider skills and experience. So that's the statement there. So the theme behind this is the responsibility for matching horses to riders and other people around the place. So if you go down now to the assessment conditions, we've said here an enclosed riding environment. So the SMEs were strong on that. It's safer to do this in an enclosed area. In terms of the live, calm, consistent, obedient horses specified in the performance evidence, they're assessed as suitable for the assessment of this unit and for the individual being assessed. So you have to bear that in mind. And we've got a comment on horse matching. This has been adapted from the SIS units. We never had this comment in the past. So horse matching prior to all assessments involving horse interaction is essential. Assessors must complete, participate in or validate a risk assessment of both the individual being assessed and other participant riders' characteristics and level of horse handling and riding skills. And 2 is match or validate the matching of horses, and the suitability, match or validate the matching of horses with suitable history, size and temperament to both the individual being assessed and other participants to ensure the rider and horse combination is safe. Now, we've put a little disclaimer on this because we're getting feedback that the whole risk assessment is becoming a federal case, especially if people are being assessed in the workplace and they ride that horse. So we've put in note, if the employee is being assessed in their workplace, the risk assessment above can be replaced with advice from a workplace supervisor that the employee has previously ridden the horse to be used for the assessment and the horse and rider are suitably matched for the assessment tasks. So hopefully that should reduce volumes of paperwork that aren't necessary. The companion volume statement is the same. In the riding units, we've also got the last paragraph there. The following specific assessor requirements apply to this unit. The assessor must hold a current recognised qualification for instructing or coaching horse riding and handling skills. And we've explained what that is in the user guide. We can bring that up if people like. And then we got this and or, a minimum of 3 years experience riding a number of different horses and providing instruction on riding techniques to beginner level riders. There's a comment there next to that and or, which Lucinda's going to open up. So we're seeking feedback. Should this be and or should it be an and? Like, is it a must to have the experience, or can you have one or the other? So that's up for grabs. We're conscious that a lot of RTOs have difficulty getting trainers in this space across all the units, in fact. So we're trying to cover the safety and keep a level of flexibility. So that's why we're asking the question there. So in terms of, there's a concept of a deleted unit. Once something is deleted, it goes out of the training package and is no longer available, different to a removed or superseded unit. So these 4 units we are proposing to remove. I've already mentioned the approach and catch horses, so I won't dwell on that. There's these 2 units that came out of that safety project in 2017. Apply knowledge of minimizing impact of falling from a horse, which is a knowledge-based unit. And then there's the demonstrate riding techniques to avoid for avoiding falls and reducing the impact of falls. Back in 2017, they were 1 unit. They became separated as 2 units. There are no enrolments. The feedback we're getting from RTOs is they're quite risky to teach, and no one is really prepared to teach them. And you have to do the 302 to do the 303. So we're proposing to delete those. I don't know if anyone's got any commentary on that, for or against. Okay, I'll move on. And the provide information on horses. There are no enrolments in this unit. It's not a really greatly written unit. It's basically a retail unit where you find out what the client wants. You investigate horse, their background, breeding, function, training, education, and then, recommend the horse to the client. We were saying it could be superseded by ACM MER 405, provide advice on livestock products, which used to have, before December, animals as part of products. But Lucinda informed me yesterday we had some feedback that they've taken the animals out of that. So I still suspect provide information on horses should be deleted. And people who want to do that work, but they tend to be specialists for starters, as in bloodline experts and work in racing. And if you really want to get into the selling techniques, there's a whole retail training package where you can, do the selling skills work. So that is that.
As Tom mentioned briefly before, the department has been looking at all of the training package components and reviewing to see what what could be deleted from the system. So they've put a process in that any components, so they would be qualifications or units of competency that have 0 or low enrolments for the past 3 years. Now, they've put a number of 42 enrolments, and that's 42 enrolments for each of the past 3 years. They are seeking additional support from people such as yourselves, so from RTOs and stakeholders and industry, to say that these components are required. So what we're asking and hoping we can get from you all is just even an email in to say, yes, I see the certificate 3 in horse care is required by industry, and just a little why. We know that this is a very niche market, therefore there are low enrolments in some of these areas. We've also seen that we have had 3 units of competency that cover daily care of horses, and by merging those together and making a more robust unit, that's going to be one of our, arguments to say that this should be retained. However, if we can get any type of support from you guys sent through, I'm happy to have discussions outside of the presentation or just any kind of email to say that, yes, you see that this is needed by industry. That's going to be a really big help for us when we submit this off to the department. Another question that the department are asking us to put out there is, should the teacher transition periods be extended? So for those of you in the RTO space, if you do have any advice or any opinions on that, please let us know, and we'll pass that through to the department as well. Okay, I'm just going to go quickly through how to provide feedback on the drafts and just to show you the site. So just regarding the feedback, please provide nice and clear feedback for us. We will follow up if there is something that we can't quite understand, but constructive feedback is always appreciated, with some explanations on why perhaps you're disagreeing or agreeing with something. We also really appreciate positive feedback, just so that we know that you do like any of the drafts. And just a polite reminder that these are a national standard, so there may be some differences across the states and territories. We do have instructions on the Feedback Hub, and they are available via the website, and I will just bring up the web page now for us all. So through skillsimpact.com.au, you can navigate to our project by going into the Projects tab and into the Horse Care section. There is some information here about what's been happening in the project. As Tom mentioned before, in the comment boxes in the mapping is the really detailed information on what's happened from the original training.gov component to what our first draft is showing. So we have put together a document called the Summary of Technical Changes. If you did want to look at in detail what has happened from one draft to another, or from one publication to our first draft, please have a look at that document. The instructions on how to provide feedback are available here. You can also provide feedback via email. You're more than welcome to download all of the drafts as Word documents. I just ask if you could please use track changes or even comment boxes, just so it's a bit easier for us to track your feedback. And then you can email it through to myself, and my email address is available on the web page. The components are listed down as qualifications and skill sets, and the units of competency are grouped together. So the ones that we've talked about today are identified as the certificate 2 and 3. We've classified under the safety, general horse care, and exercise and riding. So I'll just go through and pick one of these units. You can see here we have got a little bit of explanation about what's happened. So for this one here, the developed riding skills for exercising horses is actually merging content from 2 units. So I'll just go through to show you the Feedback Hub. If you've used our Feedback Hub before, you will have a login. If not, you will need to register to make a new account. If you've forgotten your password, there is a Forgot My Password section there for you. The first thing that will be asked is if you wanted to receive any of our news alerts. We have a general newsletter. If you did want to receive any news alerts regarding this project or anything related to this project, click on the Animal Care and Management area. Okay, so the Feedback Hub is anonymous when you're viewing it, so you will be given a unique identifying number. We can see in the back end who you are, just so that we're able to follow up if you do have any feedback that we just want to clarify. You can view the drafts in full screen mode, which is this button here, but I would recommend that you have a read through the drafts. We have got some questions in there for you, so I'll just scroll down. I believe this one's got a question of the and/or and the assessment conditions. So if I wanted to respond to this, should this be and/or, I click on Provide New Comment. I highly recommend using the highlight text function. It's just a bit easier for us to track where your feedback is from. I'll go through and say highlight the text, and then a little comment box will appear, which you can move around. So if I'm agreeing with the use of and/or, I will simply say agree, keep, and/or, and to save my comment, all I need to do is click out of the box. If you wanted to reply to somebody else's comment, please include a little bit more detail. So if I was replying to this one here, I would provide comment and just say agree with 161, also want to keep and/or, just so it's nice and clear for us. If I decided that I wanted to delete my comment, just click back into your comment box and press delete. Some of these drafts will get quite busy with a lot of feedback. You can turn the comments on or off so that you can view the document in plain form. So that's a quick snapshot on how to provide feedback. Our feedback is available until Tuesday, the 16th of March, when we'll close down the hub. If you do experience any issues in providing the feedback or logging into the system, please let me know. I'm happy for you to email anything through to me or give me a call. The next drafts, which are our validation drafts, we anticipate to be ready in early May 2021. Our contact details are here on the screen for you. So you've got my email address here and Tom's. Diana's our Industry Engagement Manager, who reports to the Animal Care and Management Industry Reference Committee, who put forth these projects. If you did have anything that you'd like to speak to Diana about, perhaps maybe any other areas in the Animal Care and Management training package, please feel free to do so. And don't forget to subscribe to that newsletter. All right, well, we might finish up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along today. I'm really looking forward to seeing your feedback through the Feedback Hub. Please do reach out if you have any questions. More than happy to answer them. Thank you for coming along.